let's put our hands together for Brother Columbus Cody.
So today I want to talk to you about 4 traits to emulate. 4 traits to emulate. And if you're like me, maybe you don't know what all the words mean. So I had to look up the word emulate. So some of y'all are like, thank you, Brother Cody. You're going to tell us because I don't know what that word means either. The word emulate means to strive to equal or to excel. To strive to equal or to excel. To be just like or to be better than. Okay? Another definition means to imitate. So to emulate is to imitate or to strive to be like someone or to be better than them. And so the first verse I want to share with you, I recommend that you write down each verse and go back and read it. I recommend that you write down all 4 of these points and revisit them later. Okay? Because right now you may remember 1 or 2, but as you go home, you're going to want to think about these 4 and what they mean in your life. These 4, and to see if they're lacking, if they're missing. Because if they are, you want to emulate these. You want to implement these and then emulate these, okay? So the first chapter, or the first verse I want to share with you, I'm going to read it in 3 different translations. This is 1 Corinthians 11:1. This is the King James Version. Paul writes to the Corinthians and he says, Be ye followers of me, even also I am of Christ. Be ye followers of me, even also I am of Christ. This is the NIV. Follow my example, also I follow the example of Christ. This is the New Living Translation. And you should imitate me just as I imitate Christ. So what Paul is trying to get them to see is that you want to be like me when I'm being like Christ. Paul is a man, which means men can be flawed. Don't follow everything I do. Follow what I do that resembles Christ. Now that's something for us to understand, because a lot of times we become worshipers of men instead of the God of that man. Then we put a man on a pedestal so high that when he does fall, we use that as an excuse for us to lower our standard of living. So what Paul is saying is, follow me as I follow Jesus. Do what I'm doing as I'm following Jesus. If you see something in me that doesn't look like Jesus, don't repeat that. But if what I'm doing resembles Christ, imitate me, please. When I was in high school, there was this guy that I thought was super cool. I wanted to be like him so bad, right? This dude he had all the best clothes. Even the waves in his hair was like perfectly sculpted, right? All the girls liked him. I just wanted to be like this guy, right? He had one problem. He had a stutter. When he talked, he would stutter. He had trouble getting the words out of his mouth. Do you know I found myself trying to stutter on purpose? Isn't that crazy? God has blessed me with the ability to perfectly get my words out, and I'm choosing to lower my standard to sound like him. Now that's a whole nother lesson for a whole nother day. But I do have a question for you. Who are you emulating? Who are you imitating? I got another question. Who's emulating you? Think about that. Who is imitating you? And does their emulating you lead them closer to Christ or further from him? Because someone is copying you. You might not realize it. They may never tell you with their words, but they are copying you. And you've been copying people your whole life too. How many of y'all have ever heard someone say, man, everybody in my family got a bad temper? Really? Really? Like, who told you that? You're emulating what you saw your mom do. Was it like Christ? No. Don't emulate that. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff your mom did that is like Christ. That's the stuff you want to do. But the stuff that's not like Christ, avoid it at all costs. Does you emulating me lead you closer to Christ or further from him. And I want to share 4 traits with you that we should seek to emulate. And if we desire to live our very best lives, to live a fulfilled life, these 4 will get us closer to that mark. Now, there's a lot of traits we could talk about, but this is called hour of power, not 24 hours of power, right? Now, believe it or not, if you start searching for traits and start living by them, you will start to live with 24 hours of power. I want you to write these down and look at them later. Number 1, obey even when you don't have all the details. I'm going to say that again. Obey even when you don't have all the details. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, it says, "Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land I will show you." He came to Abram, which is later Abraham, and he tells him, I want you to leave what you're familiar with to a place I will show you. He didn't say go to this place. He said to a place I will show you. There's some unknown details here. And when God gives you unknown details, you have to trust him, right? To some people, this doesn't seem like a big deal. But we must understand that connection to family in those days was a huge deal. This is where you get your stability. Your family is your stability. Your family is your livelihood. So if God says, leave all of this behind, it's like saying, I want you to start over somewhere, but you don't know where you're going. I think people that come from close-knit families understand the difficulty of this verse more than people who are kind of loners. So if you're a loner, you don't really understand how close-knit families work. I'll never forget, I left home when I was 17, I joined the Navy. And from that moment on, I was kind of like a man to myself, you know. And of course, I loved my mom, but I just wasn't under my mom like that. And so when I got married, my wife was like, I want to call mom and tell her the drapes we're going to pick out. And I'm thinking, you going to call your mom about everything we do? I didn't understand the closeness that family can be because I didn't have that. I didn't want, Mama, guess what? Me and Terry just went to Macy's. I bought some boots. You ain't going to believe what these boots, that wasn't me. But she wanted to include her mom in everything that was going on because she loved her mom. I had to learn to appreciate that because that's not how I was built. So when God says to Abraham, I want you to get up and I want you to move over here, he doesn't say where you're going. And see, oftentimes we desire to follow God, but we need a few more details. Where am I going, Lord? Who's going with me, Lord? How long I got to stay there, Lord? God didn't say any of that in here. He says, go to a place that I will show you. Let me read verse 2 through 4 for you. It says, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curse you, and thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. And in thee, Verse 4, the first 3 words of verse 4 are beautiful. It says, so Abram departed. God says, get up, go to a place that I'm going to show you. And I'm going to make your name great. And everybody in the world is going to be blessed through you. And Abraham got up and he left. And Abram departed, and the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. He was 75 years old when he left. Now, I'm not going to say raise your hand if you're over 75 in here. I ain't going to do you like that. But have we become too familiar and too comfortable in our lives that if God gives us a mission, we'd struggle to move on it? You got to imagine now, 75 years you've been here. This is all you know. And God says, switch it up. I don't know about you guys, but I don't really like to change that much. I like consistency. I like to wake up and know what the day is going to be like. But when you serve God, sometimes that's not the mode of your day. One of the things that people hate most and resist most is change. They don't like it. But my question is, will we obey? Will we move when God says if it makes us uncomfortable? If we don't have all the details? Let me give you another one. John chapter 2, verse 1 through 5. Write this down. John 2, 1 through 5. It says, "And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee. And the mother of Jesus was there, and both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage." So Jesus got an invite. He's at the marriage. His mom is at the marriage. Verse 3 says, "And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto him, They have no wine." They ran out of wine. They ran out of, how you going to run out of wine at the party? You can't run out of wine. It's like going to the Super Bowl party and they run out of wings. You can't run out of wings. Man, I'm finna go. They ran out of wings. 9 people ate wings and they out already. They ran out of wine. Verse 4, Jesus said unto her, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" What does that have to do with me, mama? Why are you telling me about them running out of wine? Why are you bringing that over here, mama? He said, my hour has not yet come. It's not time for me to express myself this way yet. This was his first miracle. And then verse 5 is where it says such a beautiful statement. Verse 5 says, "His mother said unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it." She says, "Jesus, they're out of wine." Jesus says, "Okay, am I the wine bringer?" She says, "Jesus, what did mama say now?" "Yes, ma'am." Then she looks at the workers and she says, "Whatever he tells you to do, you do it." Some of the greatest words of advice that we will ever hear is whatever he says to do, do it. Don't ask details, just do it. So Jesus tells them to grab 6 water pots that are nearby. And these water pots fill up about 20 to 30 gallons. He says to them to fill them with water. I like that. It says fill them with water. And I thought to myself when I read this, how many of us are not blessed the way we should be because when we're told to fill our lives with something, we just pour a couple drops in it. See, he said fill the pots. What if they would have poured a little bit in each pot? What if he gave them wine in each pot, but just the amount of water they put in there? What if you and I are walking around with low power, no power, because he says fill yourself, and I go, that's enough for today. Have y'all ever heard this one? Put on the whole armor of God. Right? Why I gotta put on the whole thing, Jesus? I mean, we ain't been fighting in forever. I can't remember the last time I fought. I'm just gonna put the shoes on. I mean, this shield is too heavy. I mean, the last time I carried this shield, I was carrying around, didn't nothing happen anyway. I'm just going, you know what? I'll put on the helmet, Jesus, but this breastplate just get in my way and it's uncomfortable. And that is when the enemy attacks. When you don't have on the whole armor. He says to fill the water pots. He says put on the whole armor. And we say, can I get away with half? Like half is better than nothing, Jesus. That's when the enemy attacks. Now get this. We've become complacent with God's protection. Complacency is not a good thing. Contentment is a good thing. Complacent is not. Always be content, but never be complacent. Always seek to fill yourself more and more with the things of God. Never be okay with, I'm good with this week because I heard a good message. Hear another one. Read some more. Learn some more. Every day, fill your heart with something that will protect you. Put on that armor every day. Will we obey? Will we move when God says if we don't have all the details? Number 2, the second trait to emulate is let nothing keep you from Christ. Let nothing keep you from Christ. I want us to be tenacious in our pursuit of Christ, to be ferocious, to go after him with everything you've got. And this might seem foreign to some of us because we struggle to commit to anything, myself included. You know, your doctor give you medicine for a week. After you feel good in 3 days, you just stop taking the medicine. It's 1 week. We can't commit to 1 week. Man, that pill's too big. Why you give me 2 pills? How come I can't just take 1? We can't commit to anything. Number 2, let nothing keep you from Christ. Luke chapter 19, verse 1 through 4. And I'm going to read the NLT because I like the way it sounds. And because you don't have the scriptures on the screen behind me, I can paint the picture for you and you can see it. You can even close your eyes if you want to. Don't go to sleep, though. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed up a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. You guys have heard this story, yes? Zacchaeus. We've sang about him since we were wee little kids because he's a wee little man. He's too short. He's too short to see Jesus. And the crowd is not budging because of the character that he has. No one's trying to help him. He's been robbing them their whole lives. So he's like, hey, can I see? Man, if you don't get out of here. Hey, can somebody help me see Jesus? Man, they probably kicked him a few times. He couldn't see. He was too short. And it made me think, is there something in our lives that's blocking our view of Jesus? See, the people were too big for him to get there. Too tall and he can't see, and Jesus can't see him. But all of us are not we in stature, but are we in spirit? Are we small in our spirit to where we can't see Jesus? The crowd was not going to help him. So this is what he does. He turns around and goes back home, right? Is that what the Bible says he did? He didn't go back? Oh, what did I read? Maybe I made a mistake. Oh, he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road that Jesus had to pass by. I have a very serious question for you right now. If you're not sitting up, sit up for this one. I'm gonna stand up tall for this. I'm gonna pull my pants up for this one. How badly do you want to see Jesus? No, I'm being serious. How badly do you want to see Jesus? When things are blocking your view, will you quit and return back to what you know? Or will you run ahead and climb to make sure you have that meeting with him? Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith it's impossible to please God, for he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. The first time I heard that scripture, I fell in love with the word diligently. He's a rewarder of them that half-heartedly seek him. No. He's a rewarder of them that kind of, sort of seek him. No. He's a rewarder of them that diligently seeks him. You know what I didn't do? I didn't look that word up for y'all, but I have a good feeling y'all know what that word means. You don't let anything keep you from Christ. The crowd is in his way, but he positions himself to make sure there's an interaction between him and Christ. And I want to ask you, will you position yourself to make sure you can have an interaction with Jesus? Will you run ahead? See, running ahead wasn't enough, because if he ran ahead, the crowd is coming with Jesus. So what does that mean? In a few minutes, he's going to be blocked again. So he runs ahead, and then he goes, okay, I got to do more than this. He climbs up in the tree. He is a rewarder of them that diligently seeks him. If you continue to read this story, Jesus walks to the tree and stops. And he goes, Zacchaeus, come on down. I got to kick it with you tonight. I'm going to hang out at your house tonight. Then all the murmurings, look at Jesus. I know he ain't finna hang out with dude. No, he ain't finna sit with dude and eat with him, break bread with that dude. Jesus says, this is who I came for. I came to seek and save the lost. Those who are healthy don't need a doctor. He diligently sought me. He will get an audience with me. What are you willing to do to make sure you see Jesus? Understand this. The enemy, one of his greatest schemes is to interrupt your meetings with Christ. He wants to interrupt those meetings. That's the reason life is so fast for you. And me. How many of y'all, besides me, I'm going to be first to say this. How many of y'all have ever said, I really want to spend more time in my word, but I'm tired. But then I watch 4 hours of Netflix. I was going to say 5, but I didn't want y'all to judge me. How many of y'all have said, you know what? I need to spend more time in prayer to keep my minds on the things of God. But as soon as I jump in my car, and my commute is 35 to 45 minutes, depending on traffic, and the first thing I do is turn on my radio or put my new audiobook in my ear. That's 30 to 45 minutes. I could have an audience with Jesus. One of the greatest nuggets of wisdom I heard right here in this church is when you get in your car, turn your radio off. I prayed coming to church this morning. My mind is different when I walk through those doors. Even if you play gospel music, nothing wrong with it. I like gospel music. In fact, that's usually the only music I really like to listen to. It doesn't let your brain slow down enough to hear God speak. And if you start praying, after a while, I done got nothing else to say, and then you get quiet. And while you're driving in quiet, the Spirit will say, really, Lord? I never thought about that. So she was right. My wife was right. I better tell her I'm sorry. Okay, I'll tell her I'm sorry, Lord. You think she'll say you sorry? Okay, now you pushing it, brother. That's what the Spirit said. I mean, you know the Spirit tells the truth. You have 30 to 45 minutes, and in Nashville, it's getting worse and worse. Your traffic won't feel so bad when you spend it with him. I'm going to tell you, I used to sit somewhere another hour just so I wouldn't sit in traffic. But now, traffic doesn't bother me so much because I can spend that time with him. These are the times that I can position myself to meet with Christ. These are synonymous. There's another word, synonymous. That means the same as running ahead and climbing. I turn my TV off and I read my word. I turn my radio off and I spend time in prayer. That's me running ahead and climbing. And when you seek him diligently, he promises you will get an audience with him. What efforts am I willing to make to ensure that Jesus and I have an interaction? Mark chapter 5, verse 25 through 29. 25 through 29. This is the NLT as well. It says, as a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors over the years, and she spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I could just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately, the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of this terrible condition. You guys have heard this story. Let's unpack it a little bit. 12 years is a long time to deal with anything. Would you agree? 12 years, she's been bleeding constantly. Constantly. When you bleed, you lose oxygen. When you lose oxygen, you lose energy. So 12 years, she's been weak and feeble and faint. 12 years. She didn't give up. She went to every doctor she could find. She pawned the VCR. She sold all her jewelry. She paid all these doctors, and now she still doesn't feel any better. In fact, it says she feels worse. Then she hears about Jesus. Now, you got to visualize this woman. She's weak. The crowd was in Zacchaeus' way. He's too short. The crowd is in her way. She's too weak. Ain't nobody finna let me get through. That's what she said. Man, I guess I'll see him next time he comes to town. She was like, excuse me. Excuse me. Man, get out of the way, old lady. Excuse me. Excuse me. Ah, she got him. She put everything she had into reaching him. And I thought about that. Everything you got, you put everything you got into reaching Jesus? And Jesus was like, whoa, who touched me? His disciples got kind of funny. What do you mean, who touched you? Jesus, you see all these people out here. How are we going to figure out who? No. Somebody touched me. I mean, they touched me different because I felt power leave me. Somebody touched me. And then the woman had to speak up. It was me. He told her that it's your faith that healed you. It's the fact that you made sure you sought me no matter what. You pushed through every obstacle to get to me. Let nothing keep you from Christ. I heard a story once where this man had a dog, and the dog laid on a nail, and it was whimpering. It was how a dog. And this friend looks at him and goes, what's wrong with your dog? He said, he laid on a nail. He said, why don't the dog just get up? He said, I guess it doesn't hurt bad enough yet. So that's how we are. We'll lay on the nail in our lives because it don't hurt bad enough yet. We'll sit there in pain, in misery, in depression, and all we got to do is get up. All we got to do is chase God. All we got to do is cry out to him, but yet we will lay on that nail and whimper and whine, and nobody wants to help me. Here's something that I've learned in life. Desperation will make you move in life. When you're truly desperate, you're not worried about what nobody else thinks anymore. I'm not worried about if you guys judge me. If my child is dying in a hospital and I'm shouting on this front row, I'm not worried. Look, I can't believe him. Look how he's acting. Y'all remember when David came home from war and he was dancing so crazy that he danced out of his clothes? I mean, he danced out of his clothes. I would demonstrate that right now, but my wife is like, you bet not. They don't need to see that 6-pack. Or 12 or 18-pack. Whatever I got. I'm hiding it under this hoodie. How many of us are walking around weak, depressed, and overwhelmed, laying on the nails, and Jesus is just saying, bring me your problems. Bring me your plight. Reach out to me. Grab hold of me. Call out to me. I got you. Let nothing keep you from Jesus. Number 3, remember the giant situations you've already overcome. Remember the giant situations you've already overcome. Now, you're not going to read this one, but I hope you go back and read it. If you look back in 1 Samuel chapter 17, and you could read this whole section to get this account. But we're going to focus on 3 verses, 34 through 37. But let me give you a little backstory. War has broken out between Israel and the Philistine army. Just like there's war right now overseas. There's war everywhere. But war is broken out between the people of God and the Philistine army. And the Philistines has this one soldier, and he's huge. I mean, he's so big and strong. He's impressive. He's so impressive that the Bible breaks down his stats. It tells you how tall he is. It tells you how much his sword weighed, how much his chest plate weighed. I think his chest plate weighed about 125 pounds. Now imagine putting 125 pounds worth of armor on you and still having to fight. And so this soldier, this giant, would step out every day and he would talk bad to God's people. And he would say, send out somebody to come and fight me. And if I kill him, y'all will be our servants. And if he kills me, we'll be your servants. And everybody was scared of him. Everybody, even the king, everybody's scared of him. Now, meanwhile, back at home, there's a little shepherd boy, and he's tending the flock, and his dad calls him in the house. And he says, son, that boy's name was David. He says, son, I need you to take this food to your brothers out on the battlefield and just check on them and see if they're doing okay. So he goes out, and when he gets there, this giant, this mountain of a man steps out, and he makes his daily proclamation. He starts talking bad about God and talking bad about God's people. And David says, whoa, ain't nobody gonna step to this dude? His brothers got mad. His brother, man, what are you doing here? You always trying to be in the business. David's like, what did I do? I'm telling you, the Bible's so cool because that's exactly how we talk to each other's brothers and say, man, what do I do now? Good grace, I just came to bring y'all something to eat. Then David hears what the king promises for anyone that could defeat this guy. Riches, one of his daughters. All the other men are scared, and David goes, I'll fight him. The king pulls him to the side and says, listen, man, I admire your courage, but that guy's been killing men since he was your age. I couldn't send you out there. And he says, no, see, you ain't sending me out there. You sending my God out there. So then let's fast forward to verse 34 through 37, and this is how David responds. It says, but David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off the sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them. You see, he remembered the giant situations of the past and how God had prevailed then. He's expecting God to prevail now. See, this is a trait right here that too many of us are missing. When things don't look so good now, we forget about how God brought us through the last thing that didn't look so good. I mean, think about it. There was a time you were like, oh, I'm dreading tomorrow. That was 20 years ago. God brought you through 20 years past that day that you thought you could never deal with. That is crazy to think about. That we forget that he has brought us through all of that stuff. And the enemy wants you to forget that. Because when you start focusing on, and this is a cliche, and y'all know how I feel about cliches, but this one I kind of like a little bit. Instead of telling your problem, instead of telling God how big your problem is, tell your problem how big your God is. See, I don't know why I don't like Christian cliches, but that one kind of settles a little bit. I'm focusing on the wrong thing. My perspective needs to be on, okay, yeah, I know I got to deal with this giant here, but God will make a way. The ability to remember what God has done and who God is in our lives keeps us from losing heart. It keeps us from giving in. It keeps us from quitting. It's something we must do if we desire to keep pressing forward. Because if we focus on the despair, it will cripple us. It will keep us right where we are. Hebrews 10, 35 and 36. Write that one down. This is the New Living Translation. It says, so do not throw away this confident trust in the Lord. Remember the great reward it brings you. Patient endurance is what you need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that he has promised. The reward is on the other side of the difficulty. We want God to snuff out the difficulty, but God says, no. You got to go through that to get to the reward. If you want muscles like the ones I've got, you're going to have to work out. Well, maybe not the ones I've got, but you get the idea of what I'm saying. If you want it, you're going to have to work through difficulty to get to it. There's a song by Ty Tribbett that's titled, If He Did It Before. Y'all heard that song? I was listening to it this morning. He says, if he did it before, he can do it again. Same God right now, same God back then. We've got to trust the God that has a proven record. We've got to remember where he's brought us from. Now, I'm going to text this to y'all later because when I typed it, it blessed me so much, and I don't want y'all to slow down to write it. I wrote this in my notes. Although the name of our giants may change, our God does not. Our confidence should not, and our faith must not. The giant name will change. A loss of a job, that's a giant situation. Loss of a loved one, giant situation. Trouble in my marriage, giant situation. The name changes, but God doesn't. The God that gave you power to get another job is the same God that gave you power to rekindle your marriage. The same God that made sure that you've been blessed for, none of y'all are 75 yet, 72 and a half years. It's the same God that will help you pay your rent. You're panicking over rent. You were panicking over rent 22 years ago. Do you remember that? Now you got a mortgage. You were panicking over rent. Now you got a mortgage. But I forgot that God elevated me to a mortgage. And he saw me through for 22 years. The giant may change, but your God does not. Number 4, last one, and I'm done. I think this one might be my favorite one. Give your best, even if it seems insignificant. Give your best, even if it seems insignificant. Luke chapter 21, verse 1 through 4. Again, this is the New Living Translation. It says, while Jesus was in the temple, he watched the rich people dropping their gifts in the collection box. Then a poor widow came by and dropped in 2 small coins. I tell you the truth, Jesus said, this poor widow has given more than all of the rest of them. For they have given a tiny part of their surplus. But she, poor as she is, has given everything she has. You see, God pays attention to not just what we give in life, but how we give in life. And when I say give, I'm not just talking about the physical offering. I'm talking about everything you do in life. God is watching it. This was so important that Jesus calls his disciples over to pay attention. Fellas, come over here. Let me show y'all something. Let me show you. He's always in teacher mode. Fellas, come over here. Y'all got to see this now. You see everybody, look, he just put in 2 stacks. You see that? They're like, ooh, man, he must really love the Lord. Don't get carried away. Look, okay, watch now. Look. She put in, you see what she just did? Jesus, that wasn't even worth a penny. You missed it, Simon. You missed it, Andrew. Let me explain what just happened. Those other guys, yeah, they put a lot in the offering, but that didn't mean anything to them. This lady put in everything she had, and even though it's just 2 small coins, it means everything to me. She loves me enough that she pours everything she's got into this relationship. And I know it seems insignificant to you, but the rest of the world will know her story until I return. We're still talking about this lady's story thousands of years later. We don't know none of the names of the men that put all the money in. They're not important. So do your best, even if you feel like what you're doing is small, it's insignificant, because to God it's not. We must never think that what we do for the kingdom is not valued just because it's not as big as what someone else is doing. That's important. A lot of times we feel smaller because what I'm doing is not that big. It is huge. In the sight of God, it is huge. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Everything you put your hands to do, give it everything you've got. Everything you've got. Believe it or not, what God placed in you, and you, even though you think it's small, the world needs that. He placed it specifically in you because the world needs what you have. The world is missing something because you're not offering the small gift that he's given you. In John 6, I think this is my last verse for you. John 6, 9 through 13. You can read about a time when Jesus was preaching to a large crowd and he knew they were hungry. So he asked his disciples, where can we get bread for everybody? And his disciples kind of laughed like, Jesus, you realize it would take us a couple months' salary to feed all these people? Jesus said, that's not what I asked you. Where can we get bread for all of them? And one of the other disciples said, well, all we got is this little boy's lunch here. And this, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 5 loaves and 2 fish. Jesus said, perfect. Sit everybody down. The Bible tells us that it was at least 5,000, because there was 5,000 men. They weren't even counting the women and children yet. At least 5,000 people were there when he says, sit them all down. And he blesses this little boy's lunch, this insignificant meal. 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's what, 3 fish sandwiches? Yeah. No hot sauce, no pickles, no onions, no cheese. But the Bible tells us they ate until they were full. Everybody ate until they were full. And then he says, gather all that's left. Then they picked up 12 more basketfuls. Whatever you have in your hand, if you will surrender it to God, it is not insignificant. Your voice, your thoughts, your ideas, your goals, your dreams, God placed them in you to be a blessing to this world. You got to share it. Remember, what looks insignificant to us, what appears lacking in our eyes, is all God needs to do something great. So I highly recommend that you surrender that little bit in your life so that God can do greater things. Matthew 25 and 23, he says, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Start where you are and serve with excellence, even though you feel it's small. Give your very best. So I've said a lot today, and I hope you got a lot out of today. Now, if you desire to live your best life, to enjoy the abundant life that Jesus died for, you'll need to emulate these 4 things. You need to obey God, even though he doesn't give you all the details. You'll never regret that, I promise you. Sometimes it'll be scary, it'll be hard, but you'll never regret it. Number 2, let nothing interrupt your interactions with Christ. No overtime. Yeah, I know you want to buy those new shoes, but I need to be in the house of the Lord. Number 3, remember where God has brought you from. The name of the giant changes, but that's okay because my God does not. And number 4, give your absolute best, even if it seems small to you. So I'd like to say thank you for lending me your ear, and may God continue to bless you as you walk with him. God bless you guys. Did you know that you could actually support the YouTube channel and podcast? That's right. If you have a desire to be a blessing to the show, there's many different ways you can do it. We have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, and you can use the website to make a donation. Any donation will help, and every donation will be used to pour into the lives of others. So if you want to click on the description of this video, you can find all of the information you need to make a donation. God bless you, and thank you for your support.